Hi, everybody. This is Martha Creek, marthacreek.com to contact me. And my email, my phone number, everything is there, as well as 150 or so videos, 150 audio podcasts, all sorts of resources that I've made available free because I'm motivated to get empowered teachings to the whole of the planet. So these times, this podcast and this video today is offered in a series called Mentoring Moments with Martha. And I have gotten such a rich blessing that I get to have time with very loved, beloved, trusted, respected colleagues, friends, sister souls in this case. And today we have Reverend Karen Lindvig on the call with us and on this class, this mentoring moment to explore her own path. She's been around the mulberry bush more times than we can all count, most of us. So this is offered out of a devotion for me and for her, both of us that have a similar vision to be about something and then to uplift other people that are about something. So that's how it's offered. So we'll launch into this. Karen, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I happen to have a glimpse of how many giant balls you have up in the air and how much juggling you're doing in the ministry, in your own life, and the changes that we're in this current year. And all matters of things, unbuilding, rebuilding, demolishing buildings, restructuring buildings, as well as what the humanness of us, the human plight, the human emotions that often then fall on and lean into pastoring and ministering. So I sincerely thank you for this. And I'd love you then to share with us what you can, any topic in the world, any kind of teaching. I imagine that we don't know where this will reach, and I encourage, I know that you or easily can step aside to know that we did our part, and then whatever becomes of the teaching becomes of it. And then to think about what message do you want to get to the world? What message do you want to get to listeners? If you could do something, say something to them that would represent an encouragement and inspiration, some wind beneath their wings. So just open it up and see where we go.
Sounds good. So I think if I were to give any advice about, and I'm thinking ministry, but I think life in general, is hang in there. I think 90% of anything that we do is showing up, even when we don't want to. I've been with the same church for 30 years in December, been in ministry for 36. And there actually was a Baptist minister in Seattle named Rodney Romney who'd been many decades with his church. And when I was a baby minister, we asked him, so how is it that you've stayed? He said, well, I stayed when I wanted to stay. I stayed when I wanted to leave. I stayed when they wanted me to leave. And I stayed when they wanted me to stay. So,
oh my goodness. Well, that really struck you in some way, honey.
Well, I mean, I've had a number of reasons why I have sought to stay. And part of that is my own upbringing. I was raised in Chicago in the same neighborhood. And, my parents didn't move till I was 20. And so for me, I had a grounding that has just always served me. I think for me, a sense of place is important. I wanted to give that gift to my children. So I was willing to do what I needed to do to stay with the same ministry in order to give them a sense of place. But there's also, an advantage to staying with a community for a long time. And that is that, there's just trends and there's waves and there's times when things are going really well and it's wonderful. And then there's times when they're not. And I think when they're not is when we most want to bail. And I guess what I'm saying is that for me, it feels like I always ask the question, what's best for the community, right? And I'm going to speak to the power plays and politics that happens in church a lot. There are times when I have fought to stay, not for me as much as for the whole community. Because I ask myself, what's going to happen to this entire community if I step aside and allow this to happen? And not only what does it do to the community, but then what energy am I setting up for the next minister that steps in? So, so in that way, I've just kind of decided to just ride out the rough times, because they're going to happen. You know, things are going to change and go really well and not go really well. And it's like life.
Yeah. There's such wisdom in this, Karen, and I bow to you since the time before I ever came together with you, and certainly since I have come together with that. Not only your staying power, it's very much appeals to me, an uncommon stamina you have, an uncommon motivation, and it makes sense to me now. Like even in ministry, so who do you know in ministry that's been in a ministry for 36 years?
Not very many. Not that have stayed consistently. There's some that have stepped out and stepped in again, but most of my classmates are gone. Well, yeah, I actually can't think of one that's still in ministry that has been consistently in ministry.
It's really, really something. So you have done this through thick, through thin, through going through it, growing through it, and consciously, including caring for the congregation. So then think about then somebody that could bring heat about this, that would say, oh my God, you're a doormat. You stay too long. You're martyring yourself. You're making sacrifices. It's not healthy. So speak to that kind of voice that can be self-differentiated. And yes, that was there. Yes, it may have been in your own thought stream, and how self-differentiated you were to make a choice for yourself based on what's good for the community that I'm serving and leading. And in some way, then, if we believe in our teachings, it was also good for me to stay it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it has been good for me to stay it out. So I guess maybe part of it is I was at Unity of Reno for 5 years and left because Seattle called. And I have to say that when I left Reno, I felt like somebody was ripping my skin off. And I think that there's a connection that happens with spiritual community that kind of goes beyond anything else. And so I'm connected in that way. But I have been humbled. Believe me, I have been humbled many times by staying in the church, and I've had to let my ego go. And I think the reason that I've been able to do it is by honoring my days off and my boundaries within the community. So what I have come to believe is that I am the community's best friend, but they are not my best friend. And so I can be there with boundaries for them, but I've learned not to, I mean, very few. I have lots of friends all over the country that have nothing to do with church. So for me, what is sanity making is the ability to hang out with people that have no connection to ministry whatsoever, so I don't have to be the minister in the group, right? I'm not locked into this persona, except for, you know, maybe when I'm at work. And then just to pursue things that really interest me, that are outside of ministry, and traveling. And you know, again, I've kept my connection with Chicago, and I always go back to my roots. I'm still friends with my friends from high school and even grammar school. And so there's this rootedness for me to recognize that this is not who I am. I am not this minister, you know, that's not who I am.
Yeah. And that's so profound. And every sage and seer and wise teacher has encouraged us along the ways not to mistake the roles we're in for who we are. So it's a beautiful way of expressing that. So say more about boundaries. So it's clear the need for boundaries. I think they're grossly misunderstood. I love people that will live them, teach them, even infer a boundary. So say about some examples, like what little mini lesson on boundaries could you bring in here for matters of sanity making and staying power, stamina, like that?
So honoring days off. So I have to be honest that I'm less strict about it since we've been in COVID, because all the boundaries have just all melted away. but honoring Monday and Tuesday. So don't answer emails, only answer phone calls if it's a death. You know, that's the only thing that really qualifies as an emergency. And just, again, going out and riding a bike or going for a hike or just doing something that's not church related. Other boundaries is I've learned early on not to minister to people who are outside the community because somebody in the community has asked. And when I was new at it, it'd be like, oh, could you go to the hospital and visit so-and-so? They really would benefit. And then I would go, and then I'd get thrown out because it'd be like, why are you here? You know? So I've also learned to limit who I minister to our specific community. And I also kind of have a sixth sense about someone who is like an emotional vampire who just wants to like suck the life out of you. And with that, I'm just very clear that, yeah, no, I can see a church on Sunday or you can attend a class, but no. And I also don't do long-term counseling because I know, honestly, a lot of people come to see a minister because they don't have money or any other resource to go. And I'm really good with crisis, or I'm helping you make a decision or walk through something or coaching you, but I'm not a therapist, you know, and I don't pretend to be a therapist, and I don't feel like it's the best use of my time. So I find that, you know, group work and classes and things like that serve me well. And for a while I was doing individual coaching with people in dreams, but and then again, like I love the people in my community, and I recognize that they are not my friends. And that's, I don't know, it's a thin line, I think, because it's not like I don't care. It's not like I don't hang out with them occasionally, but I'm very clear in my own mind that it's a different relationship, and I don't almost never cross it.
It's so empowering to hear, and it is very clear, and it doesn't mean that we're not friendly. It's just how I hear it and interpret it for myself is that you're not dependent on them for friendship, and you're not looking to them to fulfill the needs that you have from your own human aspects of social time, emotional time, and those things that you're clear-minded enough and sane enough and self-differentiated enough to know that I'm here serving a role, and it is to be their friend and to be friendly, and it's not to have them as my friends or to mistake them as my friends.
I think another thing that is unique to church is it was Dorothy Pearson actually who said it. She said, church is a revolving door. People are just coming in and going all the time. And that's true. And so it's another reason not to get too attached, because people leave for all kinds of reasons. And I mean, it could be because you wore the wrong dress, and it's like, you know, I'm out of here for that. And so there's that need to just sort of create a boundary, to be clear about what's what, because it's a painful part of ministry. Let's face it. You know, you do get attached to these people, and then they just disappear. And because it's a church, you can't be calling them up and going, hey, where are you? You need to come back to church, you know? So, in fact, the truth is, like in the beginning in Reno, like I used to have members of the community in my photo albums, and then something would happen and they would leave or they'd get mad. And then it was so I made an agreement with myself back then, no pictures of people in the community in my private photo albums. Now it's all on the computer, so it doesn't matter, but.
Thank you for speaking about that. And if you get a chance, when you got 8 balls in the air instead of 12, get in there and teach a class on boundaries for these ministers and training and leaders, so that leaders can last. And it's high time. So I love to see you bring your own experience to this, and not a theory of what a boundary is, but your absolute lived outness of the boundary and your understanding of the critical nature of that. You also spoke about doing things that appeal to you, and travel, I know, is one of them. I also know that you did some not improv, but comedy. And I was so stand-up comedy. So I was so struck by that. I was so proud of you for that. And loving the fact that you would keep putting yourself out there in some way. So that would take more courage than going into a lion's den in most cases. So speak about that, honey. Like what prompts you to do that? What prompts you to continue to grow yourself and to purposefully, deliberately to keep an element of joy in your life, which I think speaks to what purpose is. I usually say it at the top of these interviews that purpose for me is people that are living a life clear that what they're doing is beneficial to them, and that knowing that it's beneficial to me, I'm also clear that it benefits others, that there's benefit to others in what I'm doing today and the way I'm being today through myself and others, and that there's an element of joy in what we do, that that's a life on purpose, a life with purpose. So you are that in spades. So speak about your intentions on and your actions to find and support yourself in that way.
Well, you're right. Stand-up comedy is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And the reason I started it was I always thought that, I mean, let's face it, you give a sermon every week and it's like, it can get really boring. It's just like, And so I thought, well, comedy is a way to kind of spice up a sermon a little bit, but I didn't understand, how does comedy work? And I know to me, there's a pattern to everything. So I'm like, okay, what's the pattern of comedy? So I signed up for a stand-up comedy class in Seattle. And what I didn't know is they were like, okay, everybody, your graduation assignment is you're performing live at a comedy club. And it was like, I'm glad they did it because they threw us into it. But so what it's done for me is it's allowed me to bring more comedy into my sermons. And I've also been putting myself out there, like going to comedy clubs, and I was doing a casino. When I say that, you get 3 minutes. It's not like you're doing a whole, but those 3 minutes in comedy, every word has to count. What also was appealing to me is it's so opposite from a sermon, because a sermon is you're serious, you're factual, you're inspirational, your quotes have to be accurate. With comedy, you can lie, you can swear, you can say anything that you want, and none of it has to be true. And it was just like, it was like taking the lid off. It was like, oh my God, I can say anything I want to say. And, they may boo me or not laugh, but it's like, I don't have the restrictions that a Sunday talk puts around you, And so it's allowed me, at least before COVID, to free up a little bit. It's a little hard to do comedy when there's nobody but a screen staring back at you. But anyway, so, and what also was fun about it is in the ready room before you go on, I mean, there's usually a whole group of other comedians that are going to go on. And, at least I do, before a sermon in the ready room, I can't talk to anybody. I can't look at anybody because I'm just doing this. And it was hilarious is there's like 10 comedians and every single person is just like doing that same thing. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do when they get up there. And there was just something comforting and connecting. So I feel really connected with the comedians in Seattle. Even though I'm old enough to be their mother or grandmother, most of them are in their 20s. It's just this great community, and they're very funny people, which is like, who wouldn't want to hang around with funny people,
And that was there. Some of them may be dreaming about doing a sermon, and they're doing.
I doubt it.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah. Actually, what was funny is the next day I was walking around the University of Washington campus, and this young woman grabs me by the arm and she goes, "Oh my God, you're that comedian we just saw." I'm like, I've been a minister in Seattle for 30 years. Nobody ever recognizes me. But one night in a comedy club, and it's like, oh. It was funny.
What about your travels, honey? I know also I'm going to speak about astrology. I know that you have a passion and a skill, a craft at that also. So speak about any of that you want to, that are these very supportive venues and avenues for your life and living.
Yeah, so my two passions are astrology and yoga. And I used to live in a yoga ashram in the Bahamas. It was rough. In 1979 and 80, I was on staff and I was a yoga teacher and did all that. And anyway, since then, in the last 3 years, I've been going back as a guest every 3 years, which has just helped me kind of get centered and everything. And so that's something that I keep going back to, that I know serves and feeds me. There's also an ashram in Grass Valley, California. So, and going there helps to reset me. And then as far as traveling, I mean, gosh, I think it's just I know you travel a lot too, that it's just the most amazing thing to get you out of your routine and your way. I mean, figuring out what you're going to eat or where you're going to eat. And if they're not speaking the same language, how are you going to convey that? And it just throws you into this chaos almost, right? And it's just, there's just something so exciting about it, and just breaks all that stuff that we get locked into. And then a couple years ago, I wanted to go to Denmark because I'm Danish. So my kids and I went, and then they were going to leave and I had another week. So I just Googled all the things I love, which is writing, yoga, and astrology. And then I did Europe and then the dates. And the thing that came up was a yoga retreat in Transylvania, of all places, right down the road from Dracula's castle. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go there. And it was just lovely. And there were like no Americans there. And you know, that it was wonderful. The other thing that was really fun was about 5 years ago, there's an astrology, I don't know if they're called Astrology University or whatever, but they've been in England forever, like 25 years. And they do a school every summer for a week. It's called summer school. And it's in Oxford, England. And it was like being at Hogwarts. It was at Exeter College. The dining room had those long tables and the big portraits, just like at Hogwarts. And it was and I kept thinking, this place is so magical. And it's where Tolkien went to school. And it's where Tolkien started to write The Lord of the Rings. And you know, they meet every year. It was an amazing experience to have all of these incredible astrologers. It was like being at Hogwarts, and there's Dumbledore, and there's, you know, all these people. But it was just fascinating. So that and writing retreats I like to go on. So
yeah. So lay out again for this record what you Googled to support this sense of adventure, the 3 things you loved, a place. So say that again.
Yeah, so I was going to be in Europe for another week or 10 days alone. So I Googled writing, yoga, astrology, Europe, and the date. And then I just put it in and it went boop, but it was like this week, yoga, Transylvania.
Love that. And when people ask about other things in my life, it was something similar.
Yeah.
We can explain how we ended up in such a perfect place by just following a sense of adventure that we have and going, what do I have to lose here? Let me see what the universe would supply me with if I get clear enough about what my passions are and put it here in a Google shirt and make myself available, give myself a date. So very, very inspiring. So I also want to be on the recording, how to contact you. So in email, the Unity of Seattle address is anything you want to put out here. So if people want to contact you for support, writing, astrology, to certainly connect with the ministry there. So put out here anything you want to Karen that would give us a contact with you.
Sure. Our website is seattleunity.org. And my email address is revkaren@comcast.net. That's the best way to contact me.
Yeah. So I'd love you all to make contact with her and to get to know this, to tap into this wisdom here. I love and request from her my own assessments relative to what's going on astrologically for me. It feels like a gift to me to have that from her. So she is a master at that craft. And for any of you that are in ministry or inclined to be in ministry, this is definitely a master teacher here for you that's not only got a wisdom, the staying power, an uncommon motivation, and a clear self-differentiation that's nearly unheard of anymore. So thank you again for taking this time to visit. If just check in with yourself, Karen, before we sign off, to see, is there any message? So imagine somebody may be listening to this 2 days from now, 2 weeks, 2 years, 2,000 years. I mean, it could be, who knows where it's going to go, positively viral, and what you would want your message to be.
Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, if you're following your passion, stay with it, even on the times of the downturn and on the lows. I just think staying with something and focusing on it brings fruits that we just don't even know are there.
Yeah. It's so inspiring. Thank you for saying it again. And I remember somebody encouraging me, like, Martha, you're digging 100 holes. Like, you won't ever be able to go as deep as you can just dig 1 or 2 and see. And that's how the vision of that's coming back. So marthacreek.com, another mentoring moment with Martha, with great gratitude and absolute certainty of your divinity and the humanity that sometimes causes us to go, oh. So you're loved, you're lovable, carry on, Godspeed, be about what you're about, and know that you don't have to do it alone. And parts of it you have to do, but not all of it. You cannot do it wrong, and it's going to take longer than you like in some cases. Until we meet again, blessings and love.
Thank you.
Thanks again. marthacreek.com if I can support you. Blessings.